Welcome to Somerset Showcase. Today the subject of our show is going to be the special town meeting on May 20th. And on that special town meeting there is only going to be one article, but it deals with a very important topic that relates to building new fields and putting in a photovoltaic system at the new Somerset Middle School. And we are here with the four people who are very much involved in that, which is School Superintendent Jeff Schoonover, Project Manager Dan Tavares, Architect Troy Randall, and Building Committee Chair Victor Machado. So we have $6.8 million that has been awarded to the middle school project by the state. Can you explain to me what we are proposing for the special town meeting on May 20th?
Mr. Schoonover?
Sure. So originally, when this project was approved by the town in May 21, the cost was roughly $85 million. And then once the bids came in, at that time, post or in the midst of COVID, inflation was really rising, and the cost came in over $9 million over what we had originally planned. So then we had to scale some things back, remove some items from the project, and the MSBA, really through the work of the state Senate and House, increased our eligibility funding by that $6.8 million you just mentioned. So now with that, we're able to go back and look at some of the things that were removed, mainly the athletic fields and that PV array system that you just alluded to.
Okay.
And one of the things that also was very valuable when we did go to the town and ask for the 9.9 million, which the town voted down, one of the topics that they asked us, or they pretty much demand, is that we also reach out for extra funding. So I think the Senate heard from 31 communities saying, like, with this pandemic, we can't afford the building that we promised the taxpayers. As we know, we were very fortunate to be able to work around what we did have, that we were able to continue to keep the shell with the help of Great Services. So it was the easiest decision for the building committee to remove the fields, because that was always something that we could add easier than it would to be adding another wing to the building. So one of the things that we were able to do with the original funding is keep the same envelope that we originally had. And I think that was a great decision by the building committee as a whole, along with, and the great partner that we received with Bree being awarded the contract. So.
And I think that's a really good point, that the educational program, the building's educational program, maintained and stayed intact. And like Superintendent Schoonover said, the fields and also the PV array were an easy add-on phase 2 if the funding became available. And what happened was the state at the state level recognized the fact that there were many communities that were directly impacted by the significant increase in cost due to the pandemic and COVID situation, materials, acceleration as far as missing the cut, escalation and inflation.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So the escalation,
Up like everything.
yeah, significantly. So the state recognized that, and through the MSBA, 31 communities were benefiting from the additional funding, grant funding that they're providing for the town of Somerset.
And if I could add one more thing to Victor's comments earlier, in addition to Brate's ability to maintain the current educational program that was originally approved and eventually developed into the design, when we went back to the town and it didn't get accepted, we lost 6 months during that duration. There was already a redesign process going on, eliminating this, reducing this, and So when we went through the selection process for construction management at risk, Brait was one of 3 firms, qualified firms to be considered. They were the only ones to also commit to the schedule, to the original schedule. So in spite of us losing 6 months in the duration of the schedule, they said we can give you your educational program, your building, everything around the site, or immediately around the building, no athletic fields, and we're going to also make up that lost time. And here we are in mid-May, and we're about 85% complete with the construction, and we're looking to again turn it over by September enrollment. So
Now, how many fields would it be and what kinds of fields?
So it's really, it's 4 fields. If you look at an overhead, there are 4 unique fields: a softball field and a baseball field, 2 multi-purpose fields, soccer field, hockey. But there's also a 5th field, which is an overlay on the baseball outfield. So in the fall, when we have a couple of soccer teams and a field hockey team, all 3 would have a unique playing area. And then in the spring, softball and baseball would each have their own field. But when you look at it, it's really 4 fields, but the baseball field couples with a soccer field.
Okay. I've seen that with football fields before. I think the 49ers used to play on a home base.
that's right. Hey, you maximize what you have, and for the use of athletics, you can overlay that, so it works out very well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the building is scheduled to be turned over to the town in August. When would the fields be built?
So with the passing of this vote, Brait, since it's just a transition of just an amendment to Brait's contract to include the scope of this work, we still need to get through the abatement and demolition of the existing middle school, right? And that's going to take place starting this summer. It'll continue on into the fall. Their schedule would be to begin the development of those fields this fall. At least get it started, get it etched out, and maybe even complete one of the fields, like the multi-purpose field. One of the multi-purpose fields, get that to a point where, it can be seeded, because that's what we need to try to do is get the seeding in and have the lawn start to establish. Typically, you need 3 full growing seasons once it's seeded. So that would be one of the first fields that would be able to be turned over if they're able to meet their deadlines with the growing season. And then the other fields would be developed in the spring of 25, and with that development, then there'll be another 3-year waiting period before the actual time.
Seasons.
3 seasons, I should say. 3 seasons, 3 growing seasons. So the first growing season for that initial field would be this fall, and then you can count out when that would be available. So that's their current schedule. Obviously, they're still working out the details, but that's the intention. Is by the end of next spring, all those fields are developed, seeded, and just waiting to be established.
And that does maintain the original schedule. There's always a 2-phase approach to many of these projects, where you construct a new building on the same site as an existing building, construct the new building, occupy the new building, move out of the existing building, demolish the existing building, and then construct the fields in the area of the existing building. So that would maintain the schedule that was identified originally,
Correct.
and keep the process moving as a whole project as originally planned.
Kind of similar to the way the high school.
Exactly.
That's right. Yep.
So yeah, when you look at Brait's original schedule, it was always going to be completed in the spring of 25. So it's just going to take that kind of time.
Okay. And what is the cost of the fields?
So the actual cost of the fields, in addition to the PV arrays, are just the fields
Just the
themselves.
fields.
So the fields themselves is close to $4.9 million. So call it almost $5 million for those 4 fields to be developed. Included in that are other things beyond the fields, right? So we have drainage systems that we have to install within the field itself, as well as connecting around. That's a pretty wet area. We have retaining walls, because topography is going to require all that land to be more leveled. So that needs to be created as well. So all in, it's roughly $4.9 million for the field construction, including the project management from Bree and everything. We've also included some contingency in there as well, because we know that there's always the potential to hit ledge or other unknowns as we're excavating out there. We're already aware of some of that through some of the earlier test pits and boring. So we feel that that's the number right there, around $4.9 million just for the field construction.
Okay.
And that includes backstops, that includes, the dugouts, the infield mix, everything, right down
And
to the
you've
pictures.
cut some of the aspects of that project out, right? The irrigation,
Exactly. The building committee, through their subcommittee that reviews change orders and costs, we started with a much higher number, and then through the process of reviewing the details, a lot of things did get reduced on, like you mentioned. Like, we had alternates as well in the original contract that got removed, like changing asphalt paving walks to concrete and graded curbing in lieu of concrete curbing. So and that was all associated with that area up there. So a lot of that got removed. In addition to some other things, the fencing got looked at, and maybe we didn't need as much fencing. We had outdoor storage, relocatable storage units similar to what you have at the high school. That got reduced to what's needed, not every. So there was some
Electronic scoreboards.
Electronic scoreboards, which was a big cost. That was another one that got removed. So that reduced that cost down by at least $4 or $5 million, I think, when we were all said and done.
And one of the reasons why we reduced it did not affect the actual, the activities for the students. Those were nice to have, but when we saw the expense and what we had been allocated by the state, we had to make some decisions. And one of the things we also, even though we had $6.8 million, we felt that what we needed is to give the students and the community the scope that they were promised, not all the extra bells and whistles, and that's why we came with the 5.8, not even the whole 6.8.
I think it's also just two additional points. One is that some of these items that we're referring to, the fencing, the full dugouts, in the storage units, those can be added later if necessary. So it can be a phased scenario if, in fact, you decide to do that in the future. So it was a very thoughtful decision-making process. And I think the second point I want to make is that this is an example of how the entire project went. The committee, the subcommittee, the entire team, now including Braid as the contractor, has been very thoughtful about making sure they're frugal in their approach, but maintaining the educational program, maintaining the importance of the spaces, whether that's in the building or outside the building, to make sure that it's taxpayer driven, meaning what is the ultimate benefit for the taxpayer, and how can we spend the money for the taxpayer the most thoughtful and the most appropriately. So that's just one example here of the entire project that has been occurring over the last several years.
It's been a very thoughtful, intentional process when it came to cost.
And the other piece is we're maintaining of what we have now. It's not like we're adding a whole bunch of other items like other sports or anything like that. We're just basically maintaining what is current, that we've been providing our middle school students for the past 20 plus years.
Well, maybe this is a question for Mr. Schoonover, is why is it important to have athletic fields at a school?
Athletics, like any other extracurricular activity, it makes the whole child. I mean, it's part of the entire education system for a student. We don't want the school day just to be, or the kids' connection to school just being from 8 to 2:30. The involvement in music and athletics, it's a way for kids to continue to learn new skills, participate in the school, have school pride. It's just, there's so much value to athletics and other extracurriculars that removing it is just really not a topic of discussion that we've entered in any way.
And physical education classes would use them at times too.
Well, absolutely, right. I mean, right now, that's a good question. or a good point. If we didn't have the fields, we will have basically just grass fields, not athletic fields. So
just
there would be
lawn areas.
there would be areas for kids to use outside, but it wouldn't be necessarily the level services that Dan was describing a few minutes ago.
And one of the things, when we were looking at other schools, and this is something that obviously is something that we'll have to work with the administration, but as a school committee member, when we were traveling through Quincy and all these other schools when we were looking at what kind, new builds, remodel type of thing, we were looking at all these other options from other schools throughout the cities and towns in Massachusetts. But one of the things that we don't utilize, that I think is something that Mr. Schoonover even mentioned to me, and I don't know if he still feels that way, but it was also great to see students using the fields in these other districts prior to the beginning of school day. I think it's something that we should probably, instead of bringing them into the building, into the auditorium, give them that opportunity where they can run around, socialize with their friends, get that energy out, so when they get into the middle school, they're probably tired and actually going to focus on work. But that's something else that we would like to see being utilized, not only after school, but also before school as well.
When I was a little kid back in the 70s and 80s, we got to school early and there was a little recess before school, and we had the biggest touch football game in the field. This was at what we called an intermediate school in my town. It was 4th and 5th grade, but it was myself and a ton of my friends, and we just had this huge game, and we did that.
That's fun.
And we did that before school.
Yeah.
How about the fields being used by the community as well for leagues, other types of...
Well, it's definitely, that is something that we've talked about too. Somerset, and let's just take baseball as an example, such a rich baseball history, and we don't have many fields at all left for baseball. We've got the one field at the high school, we have South Complex, and most of them are really designed for younger players, not necessarily middle school, high school athletes, and then Pottersville. And we thought it was really crucial to maintain having another baseball field, a softball field, plus the soccer field, so that there could be some other community use of those. We don't really have a lot of that right now that exists. And as you know, the Swansea Somerset Youth Soccer League, they use North Elementary, which they can continue to use that as long as they want, but those fields weren't designed as soccer fields originally, but so it would be nice to have not just access for our students, but for our kids outside of the school day and other organizations, and for adults in the community if they need a place to use.
And during the budget process, one of the things that we worked through is, obviously currently we don't have any fields, and Mr. Schoonover has been working with Barry Fontaine trying to find fields, and one of the options that is probably most likely will happen is we may have to rent fields like from the Swansea YMCA because of the lack of fields in town. So I do feel like these fields don't just belong to the public school, but also belongs to the community. Just as the high school, you have people walking the track and things like that. So it's a community space.
I think people would be surprised how many different leagues and AAU teams and other types of sports are being played on these fields. They actually get a lot of use, and it's probably not easy to schedule them all for all these.
Right.
So how are the students at the middle school, where are they going to play their sports now?
Well, for the foreseeable future, I think with the schedule that Dan was just describing, I think we would be, so really until fall of 2026, I think that would be really the first year where we'll be able to have access to these fields if this passes. What we did this past year and what we'll do until then is continue to bus our students to North Elementary in the fall for soccer and for field hockey. Right now, softball and baseball, they're using South Complex. But the baseball field there is also used by the high school's JV team, so it really takes a lot of coordination between the middle school and the high school to make sure that they're scheduling practices and games around each other so that we've got enough practice time and game time on that field. So it's not ideal. It's working right now, but we certainly need a long-term solution, and if this doesn't pass, as Mr. Machado was just saying, looking for other options, potentially the YMCA or other places like that to lease would be things that we'd have to consider.
Yeah, the YMCA is in Swansea, and these are transportation costs you didn't have before.
That's correct, right.
Okay. How about the photovoltaic system for the school? Can you
Sure.
explain?
I can.
the
I'll start it.
Yeah, you bet.
So, I think everyone knows, about 10 years ago, the town of Somerset and the Somerset schools received this sizable grant or funding from Dominion Energy to construct these solar arrays on the rooftops of North Elementary and the middle school. So with this, the original plan was to take that existing array on the middle school roof and move it over to the new building. And the cost of that, I think, was $980,000 to transfer that over. So in the process, when we started looking at this, having a brand new array installed that I think the current system is 279 kilowatts. And this one would increase to 343, so a 23% increase in power for $49,000,
About that,
I think,
yeah. It's just
or
over
something
1
somewhere
million.
around that.
The return on investment is significant.
Yeah. And this is money that goes to the town.
Yeah.
The solar credits that go back to the town every year. It's a revenue source. So really, when we were looking at that $980,000 and then this $1,028,000 cost for this new array, is a 5% increase in cost, but it gives us 23% more energy that we're getting out of it. So I think when we presented this to the building committee, it was really a quick decision by everyone that this is really the path that we need to go down.
Plus, the existing system has over time been deteriorating and not getting the full effect. I guess you guys have done a study on that as well, right?
Yeah, the degradation of the existing system. Each year, the system degrades, and that compounds over time. And so the efficiency of a new system, and this was something that with the original documents and bidding of the existing system and the technology now, that allowed that increase of 23% in production. And so that's going to have an annual positive effect on reducing the electrical costs that the building and the town will incur. And so compounding over the next 10, 15, 20 years is a pretty significant amount of money by installing the new system on the new building.
Yeah, it sounds like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it really is. The payback period is very short, which is part of the analysis.
Is the new middle school going to use more electricity?
A new building uses more electricity than the existing building just because of the systems that are in the existing building aren't efficient. They are not up to code. So a new building does use more electricity. However, the efficiency of a new building is much, much more significant. The exterior envelope, the building systems, much more efficient than an existing building. So having the PV system will help offset the consumption that a new building has inherently with meeting the stretch codes, which is the part of the energy code.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much is the cost for the photovoltaic system?
Just over $1 million.
Just over $1 million, yeah. 1,028,000.
Okay, so between the two of them, the combined cost for the fields and the solar panels,
with the contingency about 5.8 million.
5.8
right?
million.
Yeah.
And
5.9.
so what's the plan for the $1 million that would be left from the state grant?
Well, that would fall under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen at that point. At this point, the building committee nor the school committee has made any recommendations for the $1 million. That we would leave that with the town, and then the town, I know a few of the selectmen have mentioned a couple of options, but I would let them answer that question at town meeting, because again, it wouldn't fall under our jurisdiction.
What would happen if this article didn't pass at the town meeting?
So we would just complete the project as it is, with the base contract with Bright Builders, meaning that we would complete all the site work around the existing building, complete the roadways, and then as far as that next phase, once the old building comes down, we would be doing some site work up there as well. And I misspoke a little bit earlier, but there will be some retaining walls that are going to be part of that base scope, because we need to bring all that area up to a certain grade and level it off for the future. So you'll have in the back there just lawn areas, at different levels for whatever use. We'll be putting in some infrastructure just to be able to tie things in the future. If this does fail and the town comes back later on to develop those fields. However, with that said, it's not like you can just stop there. You're beginning with a lawn and seed mix that's not appropriate for athletics. The team is recommending an underground drainage system that would all have to be installed, so everything would have to be cut back down a bit. So there's extra costs in basically retrofitting what you have right there. Taking out, rebuilding it up, putting in the proper mix, seed and loam, and then going from there. So
If the town came back at a later time for the money to do this, would that mean it would come from taxpayer money as opposed to the MSBA grant?
correct.
Yes, the MSBA would not,
It would be out of the project. Yeah.
would be out of the scope of
Yeah,
the
exactly.
project and not participating as far as what's associated with this particular project. And I would summarize a couple of things if it does not pass. One is that, as Dan mentioned, the back area would be lawn,
Right.
open field area, no structured play area. That has an inherent challenge because at some point fields will be required at the middle school, and so the redevelopment of that field area at a later date will cost more money and also require another contractor potentially to come in and remobilize and do the earthwork that could be completed now at a reasonable cost. The second piece is with the photovoltaics. We talked about the production of electricity offsetting some of the consumption annually of the building. That would not occur. So the electric bill each year would be 100% the burden of the town, and so you wouldn't have that offset to reduce annually the electrical cost of the building. So that, in addition to costs for busing, because there aren't any fields, there are several things that are in play here that would require additional costs for the project for sure at a future date. Yeah.
Okay. Anything we didn't cover? Anything else you would like to say about either of these projects that we haven't talked about?
No, I think the only last thing is, the community did ask us to seek out extra funding. I think we were very fortunate that the Senate and the House gave the $100 million to the 31 communities to help everyone that was impacted by the pandemic. And I think, so they deserve serious thanks. We were very fortunate that, with the challenges that we had, we went to a CMR type, construction manager with risk, where the building committee was much more involved in the day-to-day activities. I can only imagine how many meetings we've had, so that's terrifying. I don't even want to know. But I also think it also gave the MSBA is, the key point where they see the need. And I want to thank the two of them and their firms, because when we did requests, when they were asking for paperwork for the $6.8 million to approve, because all of our paperwork was in line, they didn't ask for anything. No, we have everything that we need. Like, there was no additional information, which was amazing. And that's why we're one of the first two to actually receive funding. So I think there's a lot of people that we're very fortunate that we were able to put, with the Senate, the House, the MSBA, our OPM, and also architects, and also the building committee. I've never seen a more dedicated a group of 20 people that have accommodated meetings and things like that. So we are very fortunate, and it's just, we're in a good place. I think the town really should approve this because it's not only going to save future monies, but it also maintains the original scope of work. And that's what we promised everyone, and that's what we're hopefully going to be able to give our people. So.
All right, and everything's on time and on budget.
Yes, walking through the building this morning, things are actually starting to come together nicely. We're starting to see more finishes, flooring, lighting is installed, and a lot of behind-the-scenes work is taking place regarding like electronics and securities and technology. The gymnasium flooring is down; it needs to be finished. The auditorium seating is in place now. So there's basically every part of that building now has, in the last 2 weeks, has just gotten that much further in terms of completion. They're going to begin their final cleaning next week, maybe later this week, but next week. So then at that point, then the building in certain areas, then the building's really going to appear like it's finished. And now it's just a matter of making sure all the systems are working, rooftop units are working, things get commissioned and tested, and then we'll be ready to turn the building over in August. So that's the goal.
It's looking exceptionally well, like the
Yes.
completed, ready to go on September, first day of school
Exactly.
in September. Yeah.
You guys sound like you know what you're doing.
Well, and
We've been
it's,
through this a couple of times.
and I do want to give credit to the contractor, because they really stepped up and they knew that this was going to be an aggressive schedule, and they created that aggressive schedule to make sure that the town receives a school building in spite of losing 6 months in their schedule. That it's going to get turned over, and so obviously it's been some challenges along the way, just like any other construction process. But I give them a lot of credit for their management and their ability to manage their subcontractors and the trades, as well as their cooperation and collaboration with the entire team and district and building committee. So I think going along with AI3 and others that were involved, but right now, it's all on the contractor to make sure that they finish, and we're there doing our part. We're all doing our part, but the pressure's really on them. Yeah, but it's coming along.
And they're delivering on what they promised.
They're delivering on what they promised, and it's going to come together. I had a lot more confidence this morning when I walked through the building, and I started to see things coming together. And it's not like I didn't have confidence, but it's like you start to see a different level of completion, and okay, we're getting there. We're going to get there. This is not going to be a challenge. And Brent's never missed a deadline.
The contractor as well, they have a lot of experience in building schools.
This is all they do. They only build schools.
Yeah.
And I know the most important thing is, I know when we open those doors for our students, but not only for the students, but when we invite the public in to actually do a tour of the place, everyone's going to be walking out of there saying, this was the right decision.
Yeah.
Especially if anybody had been in the old middle school. So I think, still, I'm always terrified every time I walk in there. So I just think it's going to be another great day for Somerset, and it's not just finding a Band-Aid. We found a solution to the next 50 to 60 years. So,
The vote on the funding for the fields and the solar panels at the new middle school will take place at the special town meeting on May 20th that will start at 6 p.m. in the Dr. Robert Perry Performing Arts Center at Somerset-Berkley Regional High School. We will see you there. Thanks for tuning in to Somerset Showcase.